Go. Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal podcast, The Wire Remixed, season 2, episode 9, Stray Rounds. As always, I'm joined by one Robert Sapp. How you doing? How you doing this afternoon, Mr. Sapp?
Doing well, sir. Doing well. How are you?
Good, man. Beautiful weather outside for those who got a chance.
Yeah, it was gorgeous today.
80 degrees, you can't beat it. Not too much humidity, which is saying a lot in the DMV. A very interesting and very, to say the least, tough weekend for those in the world of sports and entertainment. Rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman and Lute Olson passing away. Definitely Chadwick Boseman was definitely unexpected. I did not know that he had colon cancer for the better part of 4 years. So certainly rest in peace. And Clifford Robinson from the NBA family, who was a very good player, all-star, great six-man, played for a number of years. Really was one of the first stretch fours when you think about it. He was doing that in the late 80s, early 90s playing, or 90s, in the mid 90s, early 2000s playing that stretch four, that guy that could play the power forward position, but that can go out there and shoot threes and move around, have that type of versatility. Very good defensive player, and played on those two teams that went to the finals that came up short in 90 and 92 with the Portland Trailblazers. So this episode was directed by one Tim Van Patten. Anybody who knows anything about Tim Van Patten knows that not only is he one of the best television directors on TV, his specialty is action. So when you see a Tim Van Patten episode, you hear that Tim Van Patten is doing an episode in whatever it is, Game of Thrones, The Wire, Sopranos, Boardwalk Empire, you know that there's going to be some action, a major action piece happening. That's what he's known for, but he is, again, pound for pound, one of the best television directors in the game right now, without question. Has been for a decade, well over a decade. So he does this episode. This episode was ranked 47th all time by Vulture, which, Vulture's been pretty consistent with season 2, but I thought this easily could have been a top 30 episode in my book. And the epigraph is the world is a smaller place. The Greek came up with the epigraph. Now, a couple of themes that I thought about that we'll flush out. One, a contrast in organizations. I'll flush that out later. And also, I'm going to take an epigraph from a season 1 from Lester Freeman. All the pieces matter. A lot of moving pieces in this episode, and they all matter to what's going on within the world, within all these worlds that are intertwined, and that's what makes the show what it is. Opening scene, you have Bodie, as he predicted last episode. You have Bodie and the rival crew coming back. Bodie's, and the Barksdales have completely took it over that corner. You see him selling the WMD, which we will see in future episodes and future seasons. That drug that they were selling, and the lookout tells, you see the other crew getting ready with the guns, and you see the lookout on a bike who couldn't have been older than 10, which was scary, but that's the reality of the situation. You see the lookout say they're coming up the alley, then all hell breaks loose with with shots from different crews, from rivaling crews, and Bodie and Poot and the rest of and the other crew that was shooting. Nobody hits nothing. Like, there had to be at least 30 shots, and no one hits nothing in regards to each other. I don't remember any person getting hit in terms of the crew members, in terms of the gang members, but unfortunately, and this is reality, a lot of time when it comes to these gun battles, innocent person often is the victim, and that was the case in this situation. As you saw, a young man who was 9 years old getting caught with a stray bullet to the head in the window. You see his mother, obviously with the reaction, but even during the scene, before stuff is about to pop off, when she hears the first shot, she immediately has like a seemingly. I as an educator, I got thinking, this is like kind of like a fire drill. Like she had immediate like where to go, and like this is clearly not the first time this has happened because they go directly to the tub. She tells the kids to stay on the floor, and unfortunately, her 9-year-old son gets a bullet to the head as the scene ends, and you hear her screaming out the window, not out the window, but you can hear her screaming from inside her house. Very powerful opening and sad opening to this episode. What were your thoughts?
Yeah. Um, a ton of thoughts. This is a series defining event because this opens up so much of what's going to happen. So again, this is like everything that you said. I 100% agree. It was meant to strike a lot of different tones, and we talked a lot about like, well, what does it mean? Like, what was Bodhi's intention? Like, how did different things go? Like, all of that. Like last week was a mistake, wasn't a mistake, but just kind of like when I was struck by like what you said, like just when you watch the scene, it's just such an emotional scene. You don't think about those things, like who did what and why and what was the move and who, everything like that. At the end of the day in this scene, the big takeaway is that, you know, uh, a child was killed by a stray, and for what? Right? Like that's kind of like the overarching, like this is the cost of all of this. And I love it when the Wire reminds us in this way of just like, yeah, it's cool talking about Stringer and Avon and who's the king of what and what's going on with Prop Joe and the Greeks and everything like that. But at the end of the day, this is the cost of all of that. Like this is the cost of everything, is that some child somewhere gets shot for no reason. Right? Like at the like so like we can't, like, as entertaining and as enjoyable the show is, like this is a show that actually wants to say different things and talk about different things. Also, what I really liked about that scene, just aesthetically, is like what you said in terms of like them not hitting nothing. Like that's also, the Wire, doing its best as possible. It's still a TV show, and so of course there were TV different things that they did, but in terms of like the actual like the gunplay and everything like that, not making people out to be superheroes. At least right now in the show, like this isn't a show about like people rolling behind cars and being able to shoot 4 people in a minute, without wasting any. But like none of that stuff. So, anyways, this is another way that the Wire is visually hinting at people that this is not a just like have fun with what you're seeing show. Like the different stuff. Like if we're going to show violence, we're going to show not only the cost of violence, but what it actually looks like, or as close an approximation as we can get on television. Yeah, a fantastic opening scene.
You have the detail, and they realize that the Greeks have switched things up. They are not completely on to the cops, but are on to them enough to change some things up. They Daniels tells Herc and Carver, they continue to case the Greeks warehouse, continue to case the warehouse as they grow frustrated with their role in the organization or in the detail. But you see that you see in this scene, you see the cat and mouse with the Greeks versus the detail, and the detail realizing that they're going to have to dig that much deeper, and realizing how much the case has grown, in terms of dealing with the Greeks. That goes beyond one Frank Sabaka. What were your thoughts?
Yeah. This is the kind of like the nitty gritty of it all in terms of, all right, now the wires, and now you see something's up, and like all the different things that they're going to do. I always go back to season one. I can't remember. I think it was Freeman who said this quote, but it's like it was definitely like Minotti was like, I'm proud of chasing. He's talking about the Barksdale organization at the time, and no, maybe it was McNulty that finished off the line. It's either McNulty or Freeman. It might be McNulty. Now I'm thinking this through, but it's like stupid crooks make stupid cops, right? Like, and so like the reason why you're getting to this kind of nitty gritty level is because the group in which they're chasing is very intelligent, and so you need the most high end kind of investigative abilities to even figure out everything that's going on with the docs and the Greek and everything like that. So yeah, I say that to say like this is the cool part of it now, right? Like, and I think this is genuinely what, at least what the show is trying to say, is what the quote unquote the good police officers in the Baltimore City Police Department at the time, what they genuinely enjoy doing is going after criminals, going after smart criminals in a smart way.
You have Colvin and Ross, so we get introduced to Major Colvin of the Western. He comes onto the scene, of course, where Bodie and the other gangs were shooting, where of course the 9-year-old's been killed. Now, Ross is there before Colvin. Colvin arrives late. Ross chastises Colvin, saying that it used to be when a 9-year-old was shot in the head that the district commander would arrive within minutes. Ross says, not Ross, Colvin says he was in D.C. with Burrell. Basically looking, I want to say they were down there, Burrell was down there for, getting some, trying to get some money, fundraising. I believe that's what he was down there for. So he arrives with his lieutenant Mello as well. And you see Ross basically tells him, hey, look, knock down some doors, go, do the usual bullshit in terms of, how crack some corners. And Colvin's basically like, yeah, I know the drill, but what's the point? So, and he even had a quote, says it's fucking pointless jacking crews. So you can see some of his wheels are starting to spin in terms of his thoughts on, policing. You can see those wheels begin to spin, but just a little bit. But we get introduced to one. The key part of this is our introduction to one Bunny Colvin. What were your thoughts in the scene?
Yeah. We don't. It's hard to talk about this in one instance, because what's giving to us, we just don't know at this point in time how important what we're seeing is. But this goes to the show that is The Wire, and how they thought about these first few seasons at the very least. And rest assured, they know where they want to go, and right. So you want to listen to everything. You want to listen to everything that's being said. They know specifically where they're going with this.
You have Stringer and Bodie. Bodie, of course, Stringer is, of course, upset because he knows that the shooting of this kid is going to cause the cops to crack down on an organization that already is struggling with a lack of muscle and a weak product as is. So Stringer basically says everything's going to take a long time out. He instructs Bodie to drop the guns off in the harbor. Makes a very important point to Bodie. He says, this game here is more than the rep you carry. The rep you carry, the corner you hold. You have to show some flex, which to me was without question, a subtle shot, not even subtle shot, a overt shot at his own partner in terms of Avon Barksdale. And then of course he instructs Bodie instructs Bodie to get Shamrock and drop the guns off the harbor, not just a storm drain, which is normally, how they get red guns, because there were so many different guns. He says he wants every gun that fired a shot to be to disappear. What were your thoughts on this exchange between Stringer and Bodie?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's interesting, right? Because it's like everything that we've been talking about in terms of like what The Wire meant at a certain point in time in our lives and what it means now. And so when I saw those scenes a while ago, I absolutely was in the mindset of Stringer's trying to teach him a better way to go at this game. But as everything that we've talked about, like, we now know Stringer and can see it for what it is that Stringer is a manipulative SOB and is completely owning this current situation, right? Like, this is what he wanted. And so now I look at that scene, and way more so than trying to teach Bodie how to play this game, this is Stringer, to me, kind of laying down the philosophy of kind of like his administration during this time. And his philosophy is very different, as the conversation we'll see a little bit further in this episode between him and Pop Joe. But his administration, the way that he views things, is very different than Barksdale. And so the people that are with him now are his people. And so to me, he is restating his administration's position on the drug game.
Yeah, because what Bodie did is that's a page from Avon's book. Like, what Bodie did is what Avon would do. Like, somebody on our territory, we gotta handle it. So he's trying to, like you said, completely flush out that way of thinking with his own philosophy and ideology. You have Spiros, you have Bodie and Shamrock. They dropped the guns. Instead of dropping the guns, and this is, I'm going to talk about a theme in terms of organizational, a contrast in organizations, the Greeks versus the Barksdales. Instead of dropping the guns off in the shore, in the harbor, the guns,
Flash.
Yes. Instead of watching for the splash, the guns land on a ship barge, which is the worst luck in the world. We will see how that plays out over the course of this episode, what that leads to. So you had that going on with that particular scene. Spiros, Nick, and Etan, they meet up at the Greeks Deli. He tells Etan Spiros gives Nick a number for White Mike because, he basically says, and this is not chastising Nick, but basically says, look, if you're dealing in drugs, our organization is just a bit bigger than that. Like, you don't have to go through us just to deal with drugs. We got people for that. So he gives him that number. He also tells him which cans to disappear. Then he gives Eton some instructions on in terms of the warehouse phone. Tells him that we're off the warehouse phone because they are onto the cops from that standpoint. So a lot going on in that particular scene. A few things going on in that particular scene as we start to really see how large the Greek organization is, and what, you know, gives us some inklings into what, you know, their philosophies are, and from that standpoint. What are your thoughts on this scene?
Yeah, I mean, like I think it's interesting how you put it, like just like a difference in organization, like organization run. I mean, like um, where you have somebody like the Greek who has, you know, who's been doing this for a long time, and obviously doing it very successfully, and then you have somebody like Stringer who's very new at the position that he finds himself in. And so what we do know about Stringer is that Stringer is very business savvy. What we also know about Stringer is there's some street instincts for a variety of different reasons that may be lacking. And so we can start to see where the muscle portion of Stringer's administration is going to be the weak part of his administration. And the Greek's been around for many years, has many different ways, and so um, I, without saying too much, you're right on with the juxtaposition between the two organizations, and you can start to see some foreshadowing
No question
of
about
the future
no
of
question about
Barksville
no question about it in terms of how Stringer handles problems versus how the Greek handles problems. They both in this episode had to deal with some shit from not only this episode but from the previous episode in terms of the Greeks, and watch how they dealt watch how differently they dealt with their respective issues. There's a considerable contrast in how they in style, in terms of, and how they dealt with it. And to your point, you have one guy who's a veteran in the game versus another guy who is a basically has become a newly self-appointed leader of a gang, of an organization. In the towers, we go to the towers. We see the cops, of course, are cracking down in the towers, in the pit, just arresting people. The line, it was a funny line when the cops had one of the dudes. He says, "What do you say?" He says, "I say no to drugs." He says, "Say no, thank you." That was cool. That way he had him on the pin, had the guy pinned on the ground. Says, "No, say no, thank you to drugs." So of course, Colvin is not happy at this, at all. They showed the disappointment in his face. And we see, and then we see that scene. And what were your thoughts on that quick scene?
Setup.
Yep, no question about it. We get to Stringer and Prop Joe. Prop Joe tells Stringer a story about an unknown drug dealing legend named Charlie Saunders, who was dealing heroin, but no one knew about him. Stringer has no idea who the guy was. And basically, this is Prop Joe finessing Stringer, because Prop Joe knows Stringer wants to do the deal. Knows he wants to do the deal, and he's basically finessing. He did, and Prop Joe, as we come to find out, is a slippery motherfucker. Like, Prop Joe is highly intelligent and highly manipulative, even more so than Stringer, to be honest with you. So Stringer, so he tells, they make the deal, of course, without Avon's consent. Prop Joe also tells Stringer, like, yeah, when it comes to soldiering and when it comes to the war or battles, you know, Avon's your guy, but when it comes to the business, and then he left, then he did not say anything because he didn't need to say anything. Stringer knows he already, you know, Stringer can fill out the rest of that sentence, the rest of the sentence that Bob Joe was going to say, and they make the deal. He decides to give Prop Joe 3 towers to start selling Prop Joe's drugs in, and Stringer will keep the other 3 towers. A lot going on in this scene. The big winner of this scene was clearly Prop Joe. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, and with one fell swoop, they laid out um, the central thesis, the central conflict of next season at the very least. There's a lot that happened here, but it has very little to do with this season.
Yes.
So
yes,
that's what makes analyzing this a little bit tricky. So I think I want to hold on to this scene until we get into next season, or at least a little. I'll see in rewatching the next episodes if it more applies closely to this one. But this scene really, really is all about next season. Honestly, it's all about the series going forward, but we won't get that deep into it.
Do you even believe that story that he told about the dude?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. These are the. Well, here's how I say. Yes, I do. Do I believe? Yes, I do. I'll just say it like that. These are the boogie man stories that's told to organized crime. This is in La Costa Nostra stories like this. This is in any of bootleg, anywhere you want to go with organized crime throughout all of history. These are the stories, and essentially, I mean, it's like if I give you like a modern day one, or real life modern day one, it's John Gotti versus Paul Castellano,
right,
in the Gambino crime family, right? Or Paul Castellano himself is even a bad example because we all know who he is. Probably the best one is actually who the Gambino crime family is known for, is Frank Gambino. He was one of the original 5 family members, and he's the only he's the only one of which you might have heard a whiff of his name who did not end up dead or in jail. Like, he actually died of natural causes in modern day mafia, right? And so, like, that's a story that's told in a variety of different circumstances. That's told all the time. And this is the organized crime boogeyman story. And so the moral of the story that all organized crime members are supposed to learn from stories like these is keep yourself chill. Kind of like another example popped into my head as we were talking, is something that fans would know. Denzel Washington, Russell Crowe, American Gangster. Remember?
right.
Mickey Barnes is like, when he gets caught is when he has that, the outlandish fur coat on and everything. So anyways, this is repetitive throughout the history of organized crime. If you keep it real quiet, real off to the side, real chill, much less likely to get caught. The more braggadocious you are, the more out there you are, the more your name rings out, the quicker you will fall.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't doubt that character that he brought up existed, but the reason why I even had questions about the story is I feel like that Prop Joe was finessing Stringer, telling him
two things can be true at once.
What he wanted.
Two things can be true at once.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
No, that absolutely is there. Absolutely. Prop Joe wants this deal to go through because he wants the towers. So absolutely. Two things can be true at once. I do believe he was trying. He said, remember, Prop Joe doesn't give a damn about the Barksdale organization if they fall,
No.
everything, blah blah blah, whatever internal strife. What he wants is the setup that what he wants is the setup that he's talking about at this point in time. He can't think of any more in the future. What he specifically wants is really good territory for his product.
Yeah, he wants. Yeah, this is business now. This is straight.
Right. So absolutely, he's doing that, but it very much benefits him that, as in the story, what he's part of what he's saying is your actions affect us all as well. So the more stable the Barksdale organization is for him with this new deal in place, the better. So that's why I mean, two things can be true at once. He wants Stringer to be stable and successful right now, because the more stable and successful Stringer is, the more money he makes.
Yes, yeah, no question. You have Ziggy and the Duck. So Ziggy has a duck, like, he's becoming his that's his new best friend. And of course, this scene is heavy on setup, because you see Ziggy staring at a bunch of cars, and he says the duck barks or whatever, not barks, but beaks, makes a sound with his beak. And Ziggy says to the duck, "Yeah, no shit." So clearly, this will be a setup for what Ziggy has in store for the near future. Any thoughts?
Wait, so repeat that last part. You got really low. I'm like, why can't I hear him?
No, Ziggy was with the duck, and they were
staring
at the car.
No, just repeat the last thing you said.
No, I said Ziggy. I said that. So Ziggy was with the duck. They're looking at the cars, and it was kind of like Ziggy says to the duck. The duck barks, and Ziggy says, "No."
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we talked a lot about Ziggy and his duck last week, but I did want to get here to really amplify like my point last week. All right. So here's how I roll it out. All right. The problem with Ziggy and what Ziggy represents, and why people misjudge this character all the time, including, I guess, my new frenemy Vulture, is in a lot of ways, Ziggy represents all of us. And so, like, I really wanted to point out last week how many people were involved with the duck drinking, and then this week how all of that is then centered on Ziggy once the duck dies, right? Now, the implication in there, as I was watching, the implication in there is that something else happened, but it's never made clear, like never ever made clear. So I'm just going to go with what we've seen. Everybody is having a really good time feeding the duck alcohol, which is not okay for any fucking animal in the world. And so the reason why I say Ziggy represents all of us is because it's really easy to beat up on Ziggy, and it's really easy to make Ziggy the scapegoat. And in a lot of ways, that's what happens in The Wire all the time, is that all these other things are made the scapegoat. Look at those black doing drugs. Look at the poor white stevedores resulting to X, Y, and Z. The central statement of The Wire is that nobody's off the hook, and that anytime that we turn a blind eye, something bad can happen, and it's on all of us. It really is on all of us. And so everybody's going to shit on Ziggy. Everybody's going to yell at Ziggy about that. Ziggy's going to play to form, just like the drug game will play to form, and
black boys and black men will be demonized. Poor whites will be demonized. If you want to just like all this, like all of the form in there. And so there won't be a great counter argument. You can't produce a great counter argument to Ziggy, but that's why I wanted to point out last week how many people were involved in that. And Ziggy's going to be the one that looks like the asshole. And he absolutely is not. He absolutely is not. There's a lot of people to set up the blame on the duck, but nobody will take that responsibility. And Ziggy will end up being the fall guy. And we'll see ultimately how hard he falls. That is the central setup for this entire show. I say that a lot, but I mean it a lot. This is like, if we're talking about like, we're reading like The Wire's a novel, we don't play no games in literature. Everything means something. Everything means something. And every word means more than what that word is there. Every character in this show means more than what that character is. And the more you think you have your finger right on that character, two things are happening. A, you don't. Or B, that character is really, really representing you. And so wherever you're putting your finger on that character and going, oh, look at what they did, ha, 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 or look at how they, everything like that, turn that mirror right on yourself. Because that's exactly what they talk about. Ziggy's the most important character in this season and in this arc. And he is that, he's that for a reason, because he represents all of us. He represents what we do in this world when we come in here. We're onlookers, we're giggling, we're laughing, we're everything like this. And every single solitary thing that The Wire shows us is horrible. Every single solitary thing is horrible. There's not one thing that is happening in this life that is something that should be applauded or lauded or looked at as a good thing. But that's not how we consume entertainment. It's deep. It's deep. And that's why people dismiss Ziggy so easily, because they don't want to get that deep.
No, to your point too, you wrote that out perfectly. I think Ziggy definitely represents our insecurities, and I think that's to me without question. Yeah, I think Ziggy. Yeah, there's a Ziggy in all of us.
I mean, and it's. I mean, like Ziggy's the. I mean, it's. There's lots and lots of levels of complexity to it. Again, you have to take the class clown part out of the Ziggy narrative completely. Like, in order to really see what they're doing, you have to take the class clown. Ziggy's not a character to laugh at. That's the ultimate point, and that's the hardest point for people to understand. Ziggy's not a character to laugh at. Like, you should never ever laugh at Ziggy. Ziggy's tortured. He's tortured from the start. From the first time we see him to the last time we see him, he's horribly tortured for a variety of different reasons. But in this specific context of what we're talking about, think about like all the different types of things and the moves that Ziggy's doing. Ziggy's trying to maneuver in this world where it's unmaneuverable. This is not like it's not a thing to go and sell drugs. It just isn't. It's not a thing. And so if you are good at selling drugs, that's a horrible thing to be good at, because there's a whole societal conditions that create the mechanism for you to be good at this. Horrible thing to be good at. If you're not good at selling drugs, it's horrible, because you're being you're putting and placing yourself in a situation you absolutely have no place in being. And so Ziggy kind of like represents that for us. We can easily identify that he has no place in any part of this. He has no place in any part of this. But the thing we don't ask ourselves is why. And what does that mean? Those are questions we don't ask ourselves. And those are questions a show has never even asked us to even try to ask. And that's what makes The Wire different. And that's what The Wire is doing. And that's what was so revolutionary back in this time. Nowadays, we're a little bit more used and more accustomed for a show making us think and asking questions. Back then, especially in this format, it wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing. And so I get it why Ziggy's dismissed, but I'm gonna put that flag up for Ziggy because I see what the writers wanted to do with that character.
So you got Ziggy, the Duck, and Johnny 50 in the bar. He's telling Johnny 50 about a upcoming plan, which you know, which we saw earlier in terms of him looking at the cars, but he doesn't completely flesh out the plan. He doesn't completely flesh out the plan, but he's giving Johnny 50 some insight on the plan that will be coming up that he has his mind on. We see New Charles come in with not a prosthetic leg, but saying that he's going to get a prosthetic leg. Dolores, the bartender, gives New Charles some money, and then the stevedores give New Charles a new nickname, Tilt. So, what are your thoughts on that scene with Ziggy being in the bar?
Ziggy gave him that nickname, Tilt.
Ziggy gave him that, yes, Ziggy did.
It's a setup. Ziggy gave him that name.
McNulty's on the phone.
It's set up.
Yeah, it's set up. McNulty gets on the phone with the madam, trying to, of course, get in with the infiltrate the prostitution ring, and he does a horrible accent. He really didn't do an accent. He did a horrible job at selling himself on being a John, which Perlman and more importantly, Kima lets him know you sucked at that, and I wouldn't. And they basically, I mean, this scene basically depicts how well run and how detailed the Greeks are in regards to their operation with the madam. The madam asked McNulty a bunch of questions that he was not ready for, and even as a cop who's done countless interrogations, he's caught off guard by it and has to regroup and come up with another plan in terms of how they're going to get McNulty in that brothel with the prostitutes. What were your thoughts?
This is the crew doing what they do best. This is the fun thing to watch is the Wire's laid all this groundwork in terms of the investigation and what it looks like, and now it's just fun to just kind of watch them off and running off to the races with the investigative part of all of it.
So we go back to the bar. Of course, and no surprise, the Duck has died due to alcohol poison. Shocker. And Ziggy, of course, is distraught. Nick comes by the bar. Ziggy tries to fight Nick. Ziggy, of course, is drunk out of his mind as well. He tries to fight Nick. Nick kind of pushes him, after taking a punch from Ziggy, pushes him, moves him aside, comes into the bar. He asks Dolores, the bartender, what's wrong. What's wrong with Ziggy. She says, don't even talk about that. I don't even want to talk about that asshole. Then, you see a couple of the stevedores who are all fucked up. Do their usual Ziggy criticism, the boy ain't right. And then, of course, we see the picture of the boy, not the picture, but we see the scene of the Duck laid out dead on the pool table. And one of the stevedores said that, the Duck couldn't hold his liquor. What were your thoughts?
Oh, I've said everything I wanted to say on Ziggy and this subject.
Yeah, it was all, I mean, they criticized him, to your point, they criticized him, and they were the ones in the last episode, of course, buying the drinks as well. They were in on the whole.
Ziggy's the scapegoat.
Ziggy is always a scapegoat. So you have the detail figuring out their next move. They have McNulty do a London accent, which is funny because Dominic West, the actor playing McNulty, is from London. So him trying to fake a London accent, him trying to fake he does a great American accent in regards to the show, but he comes up with this London accent. Lester Freeman tells him to work on it, and Freeman encourages him to say, listen, if you're going to do this, you got to be far away. You have to be from a far place, across the pond, whatever, so that they won't feel like you're a cop. They also break down a code from a telephone call from the Greeks in regards to Prop Joe, instead of, and Daniels figures out one of the words means kilometers, kilograms, and realize that they are onto the Prop Joe's onto the main stash. So we see some of the interconnecting pieces between Prop Joe and the Greek. They have, of course, Herc and Carver, I mentioned earlier, continue to be frustrated by their assignments and what they're doing. So a lot going on in this particular scene, from McNulty to them breaking down phone codes, which is a callback to, of course, season 1, when they were breaking down codes with President Freeman, to, of course, Herc and Carver being not feeling appreciated. What were your thoughts?
Herc and Carver is really because there's a level of growth that's going on with pretty much most of the characters, and they're staying stagnant, if not going backwards in some ways. And so I'm kind of locking in on that now. I'm wondering why. And so like I said, the investigation, everything is moving forward, is now like just we're on a go in a straight path. But I'm very, very interested in knowing what I know of how the season ends. I'm very, very interested as to why Herc and Carver are making the choices they're making right now.
Yeah, I just don't. I think that they just don't want to feel. They want you to feel like they should be higher up in terms of being more involved with the investigation. But the bottom line is, what they're doing, what Herc and Carver is doing, their part of the detail is extremely important. That surveillance, taking those pictures. We saw in season 1 when Sammy Santangelo missed the Barksdales, missed Avon and Stringer, how vital that was. So they just don't recognize, for whatever reason, their importance to the detail. It's almost like they don't value themselves, to be honest with you. Like, because what
they don't see the value.
They don't see the value in what they're doing. Yes, they don't see the value in what they're doing, despite the fact that, even going back to season 1, they had a conversation with Daniels about it, and he said that he told them straight up, like, this is all important parts of the case. He told them that straight up, like, this is what basically he told them what you do basically is important. But they just, they don't see it. Well, I think Carver more so. I think Herc, this is more Herc than Carver. I think Carver, I think Herc is the one that is kind of like the aggressor from this standpoint, because he's the one. He does say people. I'm starting to feel like people don't appreciate us. Some to that extent. He says it to Carver.
Yeah.
So
they like more Carver than Herc, but we're putting them together right now. Definitely right now, they can't see value in what they're doing. They can't see value in the investigative process. It's just weird. It's wild because everybody else, all the other characters, have moved past that type of thinking. And they're the only ones, particularly in this unit, who haven't moved past that type of thinking.
I just thought about something. I think too that the show, of course, the show is, was at the time way ahead of us in terms of what the groundwork they were laying. But I also think that the show was giving us seeds to, these two will not grow together. Like they're almost incapable of growing together.
That's a great point. Great point.
And I did not see that. Of course, at the time when you're watching 2003, there's no way you're going to see it.
That's a great point.
You're just looking at them as two bumbling idiots, so to speak, or looking at just two dudes that are just not happy about their position. But I think that, I just thought about that. Like, these two together, no.
And remember, we had that thing going with McNulty and Bunk, and who else was it? Melting Bunk, the mentor, friend.
Oh, Johnny and you talking about Johnny and Bubbles?
Yes. Yeah. They fall right into that
They
category as
do.
well.
They do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So that matches in with one of the things we identified early on. We just didn't put these two there, but they
No.
1,000%. That's a
No.
great point, and they 1,000% go in there.
They
Yep.
absolutely fall into that category. Spiros and Eton discussed the value of chemicals. Again, this has been one of the things that you've been on and told our audience to pay attention to. These chemicals keep coming up. They come up for a reason. So now we get to, so this thing, I had to watch this scene a couple of times because I was like, what the fuck is going on? They discuss the value of the chemicals, and then they talk about their dealings with the Colombians. And I'm like, damn, in 2003, I didn't even think about a mention of the Colombians. This to me shows just how, like, they're operating at a different level here. We're looking at street shit with Prop Joe and Stringer and the police shit. These dudes, the Greeks, are just they are a global conglomerate, so to speak. And when they bring the Colombians into this, which become predominant in this episode, we realize like what the Greeks are doing. And I thought this scene was brilliant from that standpoint. Even though it wasn't a long scene, it just gave you some more insight in terms of how big that operation is. What were your thoughts?
Yes, I agree with everything that you're saying, and I think our early on, meaning when we were younger, our early uh big ideas about this season was the first season was about the drugs on the street level, and this was the season that was about how the drugs get into this country, like how actually this mass quantities come over here. And yeah, it just shows, to your point, the I mean, when we go back to the Nico scene, they're wholesalers. They don't do nickel. They don't deal in nickel and dime stuff. And so, especially for the product that they're wholesaling, there are few places on this planet that is better for getting the different parts of that product than Colombia. So it makes all the sense in the world that they're working with that they know the Colombians and have a business relationship with the Colombians.
We go back to the Western District. Landsman and Cole are discussing the shooting. Landsman basically is saying this is after they found out that they've got the guns that we saw Bodie drop the guns accidentally on the ship. They've of course have picked up the guns, and Landsman is inquiring about Bodie, and you know, Cole basically says, you know, we're on him. We're going to his grandmother's place and what have you. You know, what do you think you're dealing with a couple of amateurs? And then we go from there. Quick scene. What were your thoughts on this scene? Yeah. Ziggy, Double G, and Johnny 50. They're at Double G's store. Ziggy approaches Double G about a deal about a deal in terms of the stolen Mercedes. He attempts to make the deal. Lays out all the parameters about the deal to Double G. They agree to the deal, but Double G does not agree to give Ziggy an advance, a cash advance, which will be a very pivotal part in terms of that. Remember that, because Ziggy asks for advance. Double G says, let's make sure I want the merchandise first. I want to see this thing go through first before we even talk about the money that you're going to get. but Ziggy is all in terms of this deal. From that standpoint, the plan's been laid out. Double G agrees to the plan. Johnny 50 is in as far as, is going to help Ziggy out. What were your thoughts on the scheme of the stolen Mercedes and the deal that Ziggy attempts to make with Double G?
Well, yeah, I mean, like like nothing that is happening now will be new information. This is all, everything that's going on is very consistent with both characters. That's right now. Here's what you can count on. A, that Ziggy will propose a deal, and that B, Ziggy will mess it up. Those are the two things that you can count on in terms of that character, like being consistent with the character. And the thing that we know about Double G is that he can't stand Ziggy. So this doesn't seem like a match made in heaven, just right from rip. Now I will say, no, Ziggy, you cannot ask for a cash advance from
not with your reputation. No.
Not even with reputation. Ask for a cash advance for robbery. That's not a thing that happens. That's not a thing. So again, that's another little peek into like just how not of this world he is. This is just not a space that he should even be remotely around, and yet he's knee deep. He's knee deep in that space. And so when you say keep your eye on it, I agree if you keep your eye on it, but the actual mechanism of was he going to lend? He was never going to lend. Nobody's going to lend anybody money in that cases and money back. But it does also the light bulb goes off, as pretty much everybody who's dealt with Ziggy, the light bulb goes off of this is a person who doesn't know what they're doing. And so in that type of world, if you are somebody who's playing around and you don't know what they're doing, other people are going to have a very specific reaction to you. And Ziggy consistently gets this reaction from people he's dealing with. So there's some foreshadowing going on right now.
Right. McNulty, Freeman, Daniels. You have McNulty telling Daniels, basically giving Daniels his new cover. In terms of he's dressed up in the suit, he has the English accent that Freeman recommended, and he has his whole laid out this whole plan as far as this whole new identification. He's I forgot what his name was his name. From across the pond, does the English accent. So they've kind of polished that, so he can go in as the Uncover John. This is a scene that's going to set up for later on in the episode. Anything to add to this?
Set up.
Ziggy and Johnny 50 discuss how they're going to steal the cars. I have to say it was a great plan. I got to give Ziggy credit in terms of the thought. So we need 2 bolt cutters, and we're gonna go across the grass, and we're going like Ziggy really thought this plan out. He really thought this plan out. He's not dumb. He's not dumb. People criticize, and I was thinking because Johnny says something, and Ziggy immediately rebuffs it. Like, hold on, like, no, we can't do it this way because this or this that. Then we'll probably get caught. We gotta go this other way. So Ziggy, this was a well thought out plan from that standpoint in terms of the actual execution of the plan. And so that jumped out to me. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, this is very similar. I mean, like this is a well put together plan. And like Ziggy's not stupid, and it's not about Ziggy being stupid. In terms of like what it is that we're seeing, it's going to be Ziggy's stepping out on his own in a space that he's not usually out on his own in a way in which is very different from how he's managed, particularly Double G and the Greeks and everything like that. And so the initial part of it, and this you could probably say this with all his various business dealings we've seen so far, have to go well because he keeps getting involved in them. So the initial part of it is good. It's everything that happens after it.
So you have Russell, Bunk, and Freeman. They watch another can disappear. Then they go let Herc and Carver know. This is, of course, going to be set up for another scene coming up. And later on in the episode. Any thoughts on this quick scene?
Set up.
McNulty and Agent Fitz from the FBI. Of course, we saw Agent Fitz in season 1 a couple times. McNulty basically apologizes for coming at him in season 1. He then proceeds to give Fitz some information on Sergey and Double G. He gets in contact with Agent Kutris from an office in San Diego. Because Kutris, of course, knew about, has some information on Sergey and Double G. And Kutris gives Fitz basically nothing. Says, he was a mope trying to play a slick, trying to play a mope in terms of Double G. No big deal. But then as soon as Kutris hangs up on the phone on Fitz, not hangs up on Fitz, but after he takes that call, he calls a unknown number, and then speaks a different language. So at that point, we kind of get a sense of where that is going. What were your thoughts on that scene?
There's a lot to pull out here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is damn near an entire whole. Oh, I mean, we're getting this. There's so much to pull out here. I mean, we're basically getting a huge plot point that we didn't know up until this point in time, and one that will play itself. I think I'll talk about it as this is a reoccurring theme in The Wire, where even with the best efforts of a few detectives, that they keep shooting themselves in the foot for a variety of different ways because of the way that the system is set up. So I think that's the shortest. This everything that happens here is a lot. Everything that happens here is a lot.
Yeah. This is major setup for for future episodes.
It's just a lot. This is just a lot. Like, this is an entirely huge plot point that just happens. Yeah. It's a lot. There's a lot. There's no anything. I mean, because essentially what this is saying is that the investigation is jacked from beginning.
Yeah.
From jump.
Yep. Yeah.
From jump. And so this puts us on a completely different path as we're viewing what happens these last few episodes. This is very, very huge. What's going on here? It's actually very hard to put it into context because I'm thinking of how the beginning of next season starts off and how they get. Yeah, there's a lot of tentacles to this, and so I'm going to talk about it. I think the best way to play it is to talk about it as it unfolds over the next few episodes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not to give anything away, but just, the game is rigged. That's
I'm just trying. Yeah, no, this is huge. I was just trying to think about how do I even put this in perspective?
Yeah, the game.
I understand it in the context of this. Like, it doesn't surprise me because I understand it in the context of what's going on. But as I was watching it today, and I was just like, man, how do I talk about this? I was just like, this is such a big moment in the show, in the history of the series. This is a huge moment. It's way deeper than the game is rigged. Cyril, this is the fucking FBI that is infiltrated. This is way deeper than the game is rigged. This is way deeper in the context of a time where everything was about terrorism. There's a lot that's being said here. There's a ton that's being said here. This is you don't put something like this into your show lightheartedly.
No.
This is not a like you could talk shit about your own city and like the different things that you've seen. That's one thing. But to then go, nah, it's not just on the local Baltimore Police Department. Let me tell you about the times of when the FBI was jacked up. That's they're saying something here. They're saying something, or they're at the beginning of saying something. Yeah, but you don't put that in lightly. You don't.
No,
put that in lightly.
Absolutely not. Herc and Carver watch the truck come in. Of course, that's set up. Cole, Norris, and Bodie are in the interrogation room. So, of course, we know that the cops have the guns because the guns did not ever hit the water. Bodie immediately asked for a lawyer, and this is, Bodie has been getting interrogated for seemingly forever. He's been through this game a number of times, and I think you have Cole and Norris, and that's why I was laughing at that scene with Cole and Landsman and Norris when Cole says, "What do you think we are? A bunch of idiots." So Cole completely gives himself away. Now, when they bring in the bag, Bodie puts his head down, like has an oh shit moment, and then Cole's like, "Yeah, there you go. You realize you fucked up." But then Cole says, "We have prints on the guns," and at that point, it's a wrap for them from that standpoint because Bodie wiped down. Bodie knows that he has them. He kind of gives a wry smile. Says which one. He says which one, and then they point to, and then Cole kind of hesitates because Cole at that point knows that they fucked, that he's fucked, and he says that he points to a gun, and it didn't even matter which gun he pointed to because all those guns were wiped down before they were ever tossed aside. And then Bodie, of course, again asked for a lawyer. What were your thoughts on this scene?
I mean, you pretty much laid it. You pretty much laid it out. I mean, the scene was specifically what it was, and to show that to reiterate again, there's a different investigative power you got to bring, and certain elements in their department, in that specific department, are not quite there in terms of how to work seasoned vets like Bodie.
Yeah. Oh, so we get to a meeting at a restaurant between the Greek and his entire organization. As far as the hierarchies, we see the Greek, Spiros, Madam, Eton, and Double G all discussing the police looking into them through the information provided by Agent Kutras, that they realized that they realized that the police are somewhat onto them again. They discussed the Colombians taking the chemicals and paying less. And the Greek says the epigraph says, of course, the world is a smaller place during this scene. A lot going on with this particular scene as for the first time, we see the Greek kind of having, we see the Greek in everybody that's connected to him in terms of his organization or the heads, kind of discussing business here. What were your thoughts on this exchange, and especially to talk about in regards to the Colombians?
So, all right, there's a few different things. So, I think the main thing is, again, going back to kind of like our initial assessment of season 2, which is how do these quantity of drugs get here?
Right.
And this is showing you one way in which this massive quantity of drugs get here. It's not Greeks, Colombians, Russians, triad, but what I mean, like the names are the names. You can switch out any different name as we can think about like if we go back to American Gangster, it was Thailand, or Vietnam. You can switch out the different entities as you want to, but the main thing is this is not a domestic deal. We're not making the drugs here. We're not making the drugs in South Central LA and then distributing in South Central LA. This is an import-export business. And so in order for this amount of drugs to come in, you got to import it. And so in order to be able to import that much, you got to have you got to be of a certain level if you're an organization. And so that is the conduit with which the show can show the level at which the Greeks are at by linking them to the Colombians. But international drug organizations are partners all the time. That's how this whole thing works, or business partners at points in time.
So during this meeting, the Greek basically says, listen, we, despite the police attention, we're going back to business as usual. We just gotta be careful. And he, goes and they go from there. So I definitely didn't want to leave that part of it out.
Yep.
So yes.
Were you talking about setting up the club? I was going to wait.
No, we can wait on that. No,
okay,
we're not at that point.
Yep. Okay.
The detail here is Sergey's voice on the call and make the connection to the warehouse, to the warehouse phone. They realize they realize now that they have they recognize the voice from the warehouse. They get a new number, and then they call for Perlman to get a new affidavit. Any thoughts on this?
My only thought was just like, again, they are completely in the wire now. Like they are completely, they got all the different, like, this is the cool thing of seeing all the setup early on, because now we could just be like, oh, we need another wire. Here, Perlman, and then just got, like, I find that stuff really cool. So I just like how much we're in it with the wire and don't have to explain a whole bunch of it. How all just naturally makes sense now.
Yeah, no question. Stringer, Shamrock, and another Barksdale associate test the quality of Prop Joe's drugs. They realize that it is totally raw and pure. Realize it's high quality. He instructs Shamrock to allow Prop Joe into the towers, and now the agreement and they are now partners, officially partners now with Prop Joe. Quick scene, but what were your thoughts on it?
Setup.
The detail, Perlman, McNulty, they start to realize as they're discussing the Greeks, they start to realize just how big the organization is when they're talking about the Greeks and looking at all the moving pieces, because they they talk about they have their board in terms of their criminal board, and they bring up the cars, they bring up the prostitution, they bring up not Ziggy yet, but they bring up Nick the Sabaka. So they really at this point we'll start to see how big this case is, and that this case is going beyond one Frank Sabaka. What were your thoughts? This is a quick scene, but what were your thoughts?
It's definitely set up, but it's like set up for a few episodes from now. Pay attention to the I'm trying to figure out how to say it. Pay attention to Frank Sabaka's disposition from now on with everything.
Right. And this was not there was very minimal Frank Sabaka in this episode.
Yeah.
Not a lot of Frank Sabaka in this particular episode.
Yeah, but the Frank Sabaka that we see in this episode is feeling real good about life.
Yeah.
Feeling real calm, real chill right now. Yeah. Anyways, pay attention to Frank's disposition. That's yeah.
You got Double G and Ziggy discuss some of the details of the operation. Ziggy gives him some information on which cars that he can steal. I believe he mentioned that he didn't want to steal ones with sunroofs or without. It was either or. I think it was either with sunroofs or without. And then he asked Ziggy, of course, asked for the advance, which Double G says no. and says no, and of course they move on with the deal. Any thoughts?
Set up.
Stringer and the Barksdale crew. So Stringer, of course, now Bodie's out. Not he wasn't never locked up, but Bodie's out in terms of questioning. He's done questioning. Stringer is, this is Stringer giving them a earful in terms of what transpired with the shooting, and he's comparing the drug business to just regular business in terms of WorldCom and what these different corporations, and tells them, now you realize why CEOs and heads of corporations get paid the big money, because when the shit goes down, they have to deal with it. He chastises Shamrock about the guns not hitting the water. And then sends everybody else out the room with the exception of Bodie. Questions Bodie, and Bodie, of course, tells him they have nothing because they fucked up in terms of asking me about the prints, about the guns, telling me that the guns had my prints on them. And he says at that point they fucked up. And Stringer was, at the end of the scene, despite earlier disappointment, was somewhat impressed with how Bodie handled himself, jokes with him, fake boxes, jokes with him, and says, gives him a pat on the back as he walks out of the room. What were your thoughts on this scene?
So this episode's tricky, man. This episode's tricky because it's right in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a cop out to say setup, but it really, really is great setup for what is to come. So I'm going to say setup, but I have a lot to say when it happens.
I mean, to me, I'm looking at it, is Stringer just re-emphasizing, his ideology on the Barksdale organization.
Yep.
And he's going to continuously do that to kind of like, I don't say brainwash them, but to get them thinking on his page, It brings up
Yeah.
WorldCom and and what have you, and CEOs and shit like that, which in normal cases,
Yep, which he's done before. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not the first time, but this crew up, this Shamrock, Bodie, Country, these are his guys now. Like these are his guys, and he just continuously trying to separate them from the previous way of thinking. So it's kind of continuing on from that standpoint without giving any too much away in regards to your point though, it's absolutely set up. I mean, it's absolutely a setup in regards to what the
it's so tough.
yeah, it is hard. No,
I mean, season 3 goes all the way in, so it's like, anyways, just stop talking.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah. So we have Ziggy. Ziggy goes to a pawn shop, and he gets the bolt cutters, and of course, he wanted the advance because he has Double G for the advance because to pay for the bolt cutters, but instead he has to pawn the diamond necklace that he had that of course was on the late Duck's neck, and he pawns that, takes that money, gets the bolt cutters, and then of course the last image of that scene is we see Ziggy staring at a gun.
Yep.
So, which is again to what's been a recurring theme in this episode, setup.
Yep.
It's a lot. Heavy setup.
Heavy. I mean, here's what I think. I mean, like, and that's so setup definitely is an easy out. So I guess like right now, this is a whole heaping episode of foreshadowing. Like this is, yeah, this one is putting lots of different things out there.
Yeah.
Lots of major ideas out there.
So you have White Mike and Nick. Nick gets, is getting his re-up. White Mike, of course, is the local, I ain't gonna say kingpin, but a kind of a local middleman drug dealer on the corner who is, of course, connected with the Greek. And he makes a deal with Nick, but at first is against it because he normally doesn't wholesale. He says he normally doesn't wholesale. He says he wholesales for 5, not for 4. Nick says, look, the Greeks told me you were going to be straight with me. White Mike calls Sergey. Sergey confirms the deal. And then an important an important bit of dialogue between White Mike and Sergey happens, in which White Mike asks Sergey, did they kill someone in around their area? Sergey retorts, did he have arms? Did he have a face? Did he have hands? Did he have a face? Then it wasn't us. And that is an important piece of dialogue. Again, more setup, very important piece of dialogue moving forward.
But even in this one, though, this is different than setup and foreshadowing because this is actually a major plot point.
Right.
And they recognize, they acknowledge it in the episode. So this is nothing to be hidden or they acknowledge that Sergey won't shut up in this episode. And so
Sergey talks a lot. He uses a lot of talking.
Yeah. No, but he doesn't usually talk a lot because they don't care to show him on the phone. So the fact that they're showing him this many times in this episode, that's what I mean by they're acknowledging what he's saying has significant impact. So this is not even a thing where it's like like what they're doing with Stringer for next season, where we even have to tiptoe around this. This is big, and they mean it to be big. And it's big for all the reasons we all know it's big. Because he's admitting a murder on a tap line, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, that it doesn't get more obvious than that.
You have the detail, Freeman and Perez Belusky. Of course, Perez, they listen to Sergey's call. Mark it as a pertinent call, of course. McNulty gets ready for to go undercover. And then towards the end of the scene, you see Freeman Freeman makes a connection. Freeman makes a connection and then proceeds to go on to move on to his next step. What was your thoughts on this scene?
Setup.
Yeah, the Greek sitting at a park bench with Agent Kutras. He gives him some information, which we will find out about later on in this episode. But this, of course, confirms what we thought, that the Greek, has a relationship with Agent Kutras.
Yep.
Frank, Nat, and Horseface. You mentioned earlier about Frank being feeling good about himself, and the reason why he's feeling good about himself because $4 million has been allocated to the union through the government, and Frank, has champagne, has a little champagne, has the cups out, and despite that, he asked Nat about the election, about becoming treasurer for one more year. Nat again rebuffs him, says no, it's Ott's turn. And then we see Agent Kutras come in and discuss and come into Frank's office and have a question about, of course, about counterterrorism, and we will see how that plays out over the course of the episode. So Agent Kutras basically, puts a timeout on Frank's initial celebration. Frank, of course, has no idea what this is about in regards to this. And what were your thoughts on this scene?
You talking about just the part of Frank talking about what's coming?
Well, there were two parts. There were three parts. There was his discussion of the money that they're getting, the election, the part of in terms of Nat saying no, it's Ott's turn in terms of the election, and then Agent Kutras comes into Frank's office.
Yep. I think because Frank's feeling really good about himself. I think that's what that entire conversation was about. And then I think it is, there's a lot of foreshadowing in this one as well.
Yes, yep, no question. The detail watches McNulty get picked up by the muscle, the prostitute's bodyguards. We'll see how that plays out. Then you have Agent Kutras at the docks warehouse, going through the containers. That's not foreshadowing, but that was again a scene that will play out. We will see how that play out towards the latter part of this episode, with Kutras going through the containers.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like oh man, see, so this is set up of him looking through the containers. So this is set up for what's coming, but it's very interesting to think about this detail was focused on something very, very specific, and there's a lot of different things going through this port.
Yes.
So it's just interesting to think about it in that, from that mindset.
Yeah. All right, big scene. Stringer and Brianna Barksdale. Now Brianna, of course, is still grieving, rightfully so, her son's death. she says that she saw D'Angelo's death coming. Stringer, of course, plays the role, plays it perfectly as far as his emotion with her and the conversation in terms of not giving anything away in regards to any involvement that he had in that. Says tells her says no one could have saw that coming, and Stringer is defending Avon. Stringer goes to Brianna to reach out to Avon about the muscle, and to a much lesser extent about the product. Stringer in this scene is using Brianna just like he used Donette earlier this season, not last season, but earlier this season. The deal's already been made for the drugs, but it's two things. He needs muscle, number one, and he still wants to get a sense of how Avon would feel about making the deal with Prop Joe. So Brianna agrees to go reach out to Avon about that. She says as long as the towers are standing, she still is as well. A lot going on in this scene. And again, this is this is Stringer being careful and subtle with Avon. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. 100% agree, and I think it was very astute, and you're 100% correct in terms of just like how he is shifting shifting who he needs to use depending upon the circumstance. And that's a big part of what's going on. So it's very interesting to see that happen right there, and it's very interesting because we all know like how much he doesn't care about D'Angelo, and so it's very interesting for him to navigate those choppy waters in order to get what it is that he wants. And so we've said that Stringer has done a lot in this episode with the people who are absolutely now his to command, to putting out kind of like his marching orders, what he values. And so it's interesting to watch him also double down on how manipulative he is in going into these very treacherous waters between, a brother and a sister, and a mother and child's death and an uncle that just there's very dangerous waters. And so it just shows where he's at in order of getting his agenda pushed through.
Yeah. You have McNulty and the girls. McNulty, of course, he gets in and he, of course, picks out two of the girls in the hotel. We will see what that leads to over the course of the remainder of this episode. Agent Kutra's in the warehouse. So he's in the warehouse, and at first, he sees nothing. He's not getting anything. He gets on the phone, and basically you hear a voice says it's there. And then all of a sudden he discovers the drugs that are in the warehouse. What were your thoughts?
Well, he calls.
I'm assuming he calls Spiros or one of the Greeks.
No, he calls the Greek. He calls Spiros. Don't know him.
Not Spiros. Yeah, the Greek. Not Spiros.
The Greek. They only deal with each other. This is not a circumstance where you share this information with everybody around you. If you have an embedded FBI agent you don't share that information. So only the Greek in him or whatever, you know, they're the only ones talking. So he calls him and is like, or all you hear is the Greek on the other end going, assuring him laughingly that it's there. It's there. Trust me, it's there.
Yeah.
And then we find out, oh boy, is it there? Is it there?
Yes, a lot.
Yeah. I mean, and this is also another tried and true organized crime method. As long as it's been in there, a famous new one would be Whitey Bulger and how he worked for the FBI in order to turn in rivals. And so like blah 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 everything. So anyways, so this is a tried and true method. This is absolutely a tried and true method that has happened, you know, for as long as organized crime, but especially as long as organized crime and the FBI have been entangled with each other. And so yeah, that's what all that was about. That's what all of that was about. I mean, like, you know, as I think we can, even those of us who've never been personally involved in dealing drugs, from all the different things that we've seen, the drug game is not a nice game. It is not one where you make friends and everybody's having a good time with each other. So how do you get a bigger share of the pie? Is you cut the other person out. And so the Colombians and the Greeks, very nice to each other in getting this connect. Somebody does something that the other one doesn't like. In this chance, it's the Greeks who are not very excited about what the Colombians are doing. And so how do you make this a win-win scenario? Well, you have your
hold on to that. Hold on to that.
Where am I at in this?
No, hold on to that thought. We're still, because that's going to flush out in a later.
He calls him, and then he looks at it. Where else? Okay, all right, okay. So
no, you're right. You're right. But I'm saying though, no, you're right in terms of what he found the drugs in the warehouse. But I want to wait to flush out the entire. I want to wait to flush out to the audience what the Greeks did to the Colombians in a later scene that comes up.
Okay.
Because So I know you're not wrong.
Tips of the drugs.
Yeah, he gets. Yeah.
So that's the takeaway at this point in time. The paint chips are the drugs. So everything he sees is drugs.
Yes.
So it's a good day. It's a good day for the FBI.
Yeah. A good day for the FBI and a bad day
in their
for
practice. Yeah.
So we'll flush it, and we will definitely flush that out. So you have the detail back at the hotel. Before they go into the hotel, they're at the door. McNulty's already doing what he's doing with the girls. A scene that I did not pay attention enough to all these years. There's an officer who just wants to barge in before Bunk says, "What do you think we're gonna do? What do you think you're gonna do? Flush a half dozen whores down the toilet? Take it easy." So Bunk checks him, and then Bunk does the whole knock, and we're gonna lock your ass up. That officer who wanted to barge in, Officer Walker. Now, you don't know what that name means if you haven't seen all seasons of The Wire.
Are you serious?
I'm dead asses.
Was it for real? Was it supposed to be Officer Walker?
It was definitely. I did the research on it. They said during first appearances of this season, they always do a section in Wikipedia where they say first appearance.
Yeah.
His name was on there, and his name is he's the officer, and they show his name, and they say that, and I read it too on a review of it. It was hard, and then I looked back at the scene, like that damn sure was Officer Walker.
And so, like in the thing, in the what his name really is in the show, at that point in time, is Officer Walker.
Officer Walker. Yep.
Wow.
That was it. Wow. Woo. Wow. But when you think about that character, it makes perfect sense that he would want to barge in.
Sure, that makes perfect sense, but
it was that
we don't know that at this time. There's no
we did. I mean,
right. There's no. How do they even know that at this time?
But they, when I read the review, they said
That's wild.
No,
That's
but
wild.
no, it's
Wow.
I can't.
I never would have noticed that in a million years.
But that will not be the first time in The Wire that they show.
I never would have known. No. But keep to this one, because this is one I did not know. So just stay here.
I didn't know it either. I didn't know until I did the research. I did not.
Yeah.
I was just throwing it.
I never would have known. I know exactly the scene you're talking about. I know that every single time. It just never would have entered my mind. It just never would have entered my mind.
It's quick because it's
in a million years.
Quick. The scene is quick from that standpoint. So
wow.
They go into they barge in, of course, not barge in. They knock on the door. They come in. They arrest the madam, the muscle, and then we see McNulty already engaged with the two girls having sex. And then Daniels asks Kima, how's he doing? And Kima jokingly says, he'll be all right. So then, we see we see that occurrence happens. I guess to the point, I think the scene is pretty self-explanatory, but I guess they were making a point as well in regards to the approach that was necessary from a tactical standpoint. Like Bunker's like, yo, we don't have to barge down the door. Like, it's unnecessary. Why are you thinking about, why would you barge down the door? What are they going to, like, they're not going to flush, like, to his point, they're not going to flush down 8 prostitutes down the toilet. They're not going anywhere. So it's an unnecessary tactic to go to, it would just be horrible policing for us to break down the door. All we have to do is knock. So I guess the show was speaking on that terms of just quality policing versus, out of control, unnecessary policing, which we've seen in art imitated, like we've seen in real life in recent times. So I guess the show was speaking to that as well. So getting back to the docks and what happened at the warehouse, we have Rawls, Burrell, Valchek, Daniels, and Perlman in the office. They are watching as $45 million worth of drugs were being seized from the ports. Valchek, of course, not jokingly says, I want to see that type of bust against Frank Sabaka. Daniels and the rest of the detail basically tell them that the case has grown beyond Frank Sabaka and that we have, there are a lot of moving pieces. Everybody in this scene has their own agenda. Rawls wants his 14 murders. Valchek wants Sabaka. And the detail wants to completely flush out this case and just do great police work and detailed police work without rushing to judgment, without arresting anybody. They just want to make sure that all their hard work pays off. So they are refusing to arrest Sabaka. Valchek is pissed off about this. We will see how that plays out in future episodes. And the key to this, to me, was the fact that the Greek set up the Colombians. So we find out that the Greek, through that little television clip, that the Greek absolutely got his revenge on the Colombians, set up the Colombians, and of course, just strengthened it accomplishes many things. It accomplishes, sets up the Colombians, pays them back for them, ripping them, shortchanging the Greek with the money and with the money from previous scenes early in the episode, and he strengthens his relationship with the FBI by giving him a bone of $45 million worth of drugs with that setup. A lot going on in the scene. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, trying to remember where I was when I was talking about the setup, but so like that's essentially how you get the biggest slice of the pie, right? And so little does the investigation know, but they actually have the biggest wholesale of I guess cocaine. I'm trying to remember what the the time, whatever the drug is, in their sites.
Yes.
I mean, that's legitimately what they have now. They have the biggest right there, but they don't know that.
No.
So it's just interesting. It's
And
interesting because the comment that Valchek makes is so fascinating because if Valchek took his head out his ass for a second, if people took their heads out their ass for a second, and this wasn't a personal thing on Frank Sabaka, maybe you'd be able to zoom out and go, hold up, we got a whole hell of a lot going on here. We could actually bring in a career case. But as we know, in this Baltimore, at this point in time, for this group, those are not things that people are thinking about.
No. That's why I said that everybody in this room had their own agenda.
Oh, yeah.
No one, so, and I'll repeat who was in this room again for the audience. You had Rawls, Burrell, Valchek, Daniels, Perlman. Now, the detail is just doing police work. They're basically doing what they're told, but of course we know the case has expanded way beyond Frank Sabaka, and they're still trying to assemble and put all those pieces together. But they're just doing police work. Rawls wants his 14 murders, period. Burrell is just being Burrell is a politician playing commissioner. So he's trying to
leave Burrell alone.
Right, I like the Burrell character I love the Burrell character, but Burrell is doing Burrell shit. Burrell's a politician. He's not Burrell.
Burrell's a police commissioner. When you get to a certain level, that is your
yeah, it's a job. No, he's doing. Burrell. I'm saying Burrell has.
You said he was. You said he was playing police commissioner. That's what I was like.
Maybe I'm thinking about Burrell for future. All right, so disregard that comment to my audience. If you haven't seen episode,
I'm trying to fit Burrell up in.
I just threw Burrell.
There's not going to be a whole lot of times where I can defend Burrell. So.
Yeah, but no. So but Burrell's trying to navigate through all of this that's going on as well. He's trying to keep everybody calm. So Burrell's trying to be like, relax, Stan. So, but everybody in this room, that's why I thought this was a brilliant scene. Everybody in this room had their own agenda.
It absolutely is a brilliant.
That's why ultimately nothing gets done because no one's on the same page in regards to this particular institution. So I think they did a great job. The writers did a great job at depicting that, because if everybody actually, like you said, Valchek gets his head out of his ass, and kind of works with the detail instead of thinking that instead of just looking at them as just workers under him, then he would have a absolute career case. There's no question about it.
It's not, none of this is simple, right? It's not simple.
No.
That's not where I want to go there. It's not simple in terms of just just do this, then that. But the very clear part, the part that is crystal clear to the audience that we get to enjoy, that the characters can't ever enjoy because of the world that they're in, is that we're like, oh, you got the biggest people in your sight right now. You actually are right around everybody, and they'll figure it out. But anyway, so yeah. So that's the part that we just get to enjoy. We know that y'all actually if you could stop infighting, which is impossible because this is the way everything has been set up for decades now. If you could stop, then you would realize you would actually had that career case. But of course, y'all can't be anything but who you are.
Yeah. And of course, the big winner of this scene was the Greek by far. Stringer and Brianna, part 2. So Brianna has, of course, spoken to Avon. Avon has not only rebuffed the whole idea of working with Prop Joe. Of course, he doesn't know that the deal has already been made. For muscle, he says he went and found the best that he can find. And of course, that is one Brother Muzone from New York who's going to be working on retainer. And Stringer, of course, says the brother and has a look, a very perplexing look on his face. Great piece of acting by Idris Elba, because he doesn't totally give away how disappointed he is, but you know that, he just kind of like, contemplates, but without giving all his emotions away. Gives away a little bit, but not a lot to Brianna. But he, again, this, he gets his answer from Avon and gets more in return in regards to what he ever thought was going to happen in regards to the muscle. What were your thoughts on this scene? But hold on, before you go in, the reason why Avon doesn't want to deal with Prop Joe, and he rebuffs Prop Joe's offer from that standpoint, because he says, the way Brianna explains it, he says that Prop Joe would have it over us, and he did not want to be under Prop Joe's thumb. So that's why Avon did not want that offer to go through, even though it's already going through.
Yeah.
About.
Yeah. Again, this is everything is set up for next season. So again, this makes it so very, very tricky to talk about. But this sets up another central conflict. Stringer and Avon are not on the same page. Let's just put it like that. They're not on the same page. And so Stringer thought I don't have the muscle would be like the clincher for the argument. And Avon's like, oh, I'll get you some muscle.
Right.
And we will come to find out what type of muscle that is.
Yes. Yes, we will.
Yep.
So you don't think so? Stringer didn't go into that asking for muscle, expecting muscle.
No, he did not. No, he did not.
Ooh.
That was not the thing he wanted to come out of that conversation. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, did he get muscle.
Yeah. He's gonna get muscle. Yeah.
Boy, did he get
So all right, slow down. McNulty and Bunk. Okay, so McNulty and Bunk are in office. Bunk is looking over McNulty's shoulder. McNulty, of course, is typing up the report in regards to the prostitutes. Bunk says you're gonna be a Baltimore legend for this. And McNulty's saying, I know I can't lie or I'll perjure myself. And then of course Perlman sees the report that McNulty is typing. And of course he engaged in having sex with the prostitutes. And she was not pleased, to say the least. Any quick thoughts on that scene?
Oh no,
Prop Joe and Stringer. So Stringer goes back to Prop Joe with the news that Brother Muzone is coming. And Prop Joe is basically like, look, man, this is your problem. I'm not sending my people against the brother. He says that dude got more bodies on him than a Chinese cemetery. And Stringer says, true, I would take him out myself, but Avon can't know that it was coming from his own people.
Nice try.
Yeah.
Nice try.
Yeah. So this is where, of course,
tried.
This is where Stringer misreads Avon, because Stringer then goes into this little, basically this speech to Prop Joe, like, yeah, he gotta make a deal. He gotta meet up with. They gotta connect for a week. They gotta negotiate a price. That might take another week. He said it'll be like at least 2 weeks before he's in Baltimore, and by the time that comes, our deal will already be entrenched, and there's no New York, no nigga from New York is gonna change the facts from the ground. Yeah. Oh, no, Stringer. Now that's not how that thing ended up working out, as we will see in the last scene of the episode. So he completely misreads how quick Brother Muzone will arrive in New York, not in Baltimore, which we'll talk about later. But what did you think about this exchange between Prop Joe and Stringer?
Come on, Rel, you baiting me, man. Like this is literally. I mean, no, you're not baiting me. This episode is baiting me. I mean, there's everything to talk about this and nothing that I can say at the exact same time,
Gotcha.
right? Like I mean, I have everything to say about all these scenes, but in this context, it's really challenging. So just in this, just in this specific scenario, what it appears is that you have two kingpin-esque type characters who are trading off, who are at the beginning of feeling each other out through the relationship, the beginning relationship. Oh man, you have a sense because this is all. I mean, his name is Proposition Joe. This is all in his wheelhouse. Is that Stringer is more or less playing into Prop Joe's hands than not. But I do think there's a significant back and forth that's going on right now. I just think that this is more in what Prop Joe is comfortable with at this point in time.
Yeah, Prop Joe said, I mean, again, without giving anything away, Prop Joe basically says, this is your problem. Brother Muzone is your problem. I'm not, you deal with this shit, and then, we'll go from there. But this is your problem. This is not, I'm not having any part of Brother Muzone from that standpoint. So that's as far as I will go in regards to my analogy of it. Because like I said, it's too much set up, there's too much future stuff that that will flush out eventually over the course of next season to get into any type of real detail about this meeting. The detail, Herc and Carver, of course, are taking Herc and Carver are taking pictures of the truck at the warehouse. Prez says that they are moving clean cans, and then Sergey, our man Sergey, who cannot stop talking, says over the phone, there are always more children. There are always more children, which we know children is code for girls. What were your thoughts?
Wait, say that again?
On the phone, Sergey said there are always more children.
Oh, okay, yeah, got it, yeah. Okay, got it. Got it. I don't know what I heard. Yeah, got it. Yep. And I mean, like, honestly, like the cops, they knew that as well, or
so let me get the audience some context.
Hold on.
Let me get the audience some context on that conversation. So the police, a couple of scenes ago, we know the police bust the prostitutes and the main madam. They're out now. The main madam is out. She's been bailed out. She post bail. She's out, and they communicate that. They communicate that to Sergey, and then Sergey says there are always more children coming, meaning there will be more prostitutes coming. So I just want to get audience a little context from that standpoint. Why you use the code word children, children. So,
yeah. So, So the police even know that, like they only did the raid to tickle the wire, right? Like they say that, and so they know how much value is put on running girls, running prostitution ring, but they also know that won't be. I mean, they know it's a part of it, but they know that's not the major part of it. They know they don't put that much value on it. And so this is a move to specifically get the other players in motion and get them talking about the raid on the numbers that they already have, or be able to find new links to, since the detail has an idea that they switched up and that they blew their cover a little bit, they want to get new leads. And so this is specifically the way in which to do that. So everybody involved here, even from the varying different ways in which they look at it, recognize that this is not about prostitution per se. Right. And like this is the end all be all. Everybody in there recognizes that this is part of the organization, a small part of the organization, not the main cog of the organization.
Right. So we go to Colvin and his second in command, Lieutenant Mello, who, by the way, the guy who plays Lieutenant Mello is the real life Jay Lansby, for the record. They're looking at the corners in the Western District, which are somewhat quiet because of the recent raids and because the fact that Stringer, Stringer already told Bodie that we would have to take a timeout based on the kid getting shot and being killed. So, Colvin says, yeah, they're quiet for now, but again, this is foreshadowing a lot moving forward in the future this episode basically gave us an introduction, a small introduction of Bunny Colvin, and they're playing chess. The show is playing chess with this scene and with this character, Bunny Colvin in particular. Yep. That's all I can give. That's all I can say.
Yep. Just a light intro.
And then we get to one final scene. Brother Mouzon comes in from New York. He greets an officer as he walks into the towers. And the episode ends on that note. And again, a move that was completely misplayed by Stringer from that standpoint of just, he did not realize how quick Brother Mouzon would arrive in Baltimore. He's thinking maybe 1 to 2 weeks. Brother Mouzon was there within a day after discussing business with Avon. What does that tell you about, like, what when you saw that?
Well, nothing.
No, too much.
Don't do it.
No, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, Brother Mouzon is in Baltimore a day after. Stringer didn't expect him to be there that quick, and we will certainly see how that plays out over the next 3 episodes, 10, 11, 12, over the next 3 episodes. But yeah, I cannot wait to flush this character out, because this dude. I'll begin the episode talking about themes, and to me, again, even discussing this episode, look how the Greek ran his organization and dealt with problems versus how Stringer dealt with issues and problems. And it's like night and day. The Greek, despite the prostitute, the Greek has some problems to deal with during this episode. Yes, the prostitutes, they get arrested. The cops were on to him in terms of the warehouse. And the Greek basically brushes all that shit off and says, we're going to do business as usual, sets up the Colombians, has the FBI guy, FBI informant. So it's just like how the Greek versus Stringer, who doesn't get what he wants in regards to his meeting, in regards to what he thought he was going to get from Avon, does make the deal with Prop Joe in terms of getting a new drug connect. So he does accomplish that. But we see how his organization is kind of bumbling with, throwing the guns on the bars. the whole shooting of a 9-year-old kid, which forces them to shut down. You know, it's just, you know, it's kind of like watching a championship level type organization versus an organization that's kind of, I'm not going to say Stringer and the Barsters are the Knicks, but an organization that is kind of, you know, trying to find its way as they transition power from one kingpin to another. Yeah, and then my second theme, of course, is all the pieces matter. There were a lot of pieces and moving parts in this episode, and they all matter in the world of The Wire. There's not a piece that doesn't. Who was your MVP? Because I actually have to change. I had to change.
Whew, this is a tough one.
It was.
This is another tough one. Wow. Who is my MVP of this episode? You know what? I'm gonna go a little bit off the beaten path on this one. I'm gonna say The Wire was my MVP because I said over and over again how much I enjoyed just watching everybody just kind of like be able to do their thing now. They don't have to gather all X, Y, Z, everything like this. It's just like all the pieces are in place for The Wire to move as effectively as it possibly can. And they can easily make their adjustments now. And so the reason why I'm shouting out The Wire so heavy for right now is because of all the lead work that got them the 60 and the 59 ranking and all that stuff in the first couple of episodes. The first 4 episodes is now paying very, very, very big dividends, because I can't say it enough. At this point in time in television history, there's nothing that even remotely attempts to talk about how complex a operation like running a wire is, and like that type of police. There's nothing that was even remotely talking or thinking about this. So this is very high concept work for a show to put onto its viewers, and to look at it just pay off in such fantastic ways is crazy.
Yeah, I had the Greek as the MVP. Just like I said, just his navigating the leadership and his navigating this whole operation and as many parts of it. I mean, they're doing, you know, the prostitution, the drug deals, dealing with how he dealt with the Colombians, how he even dealt with the police, even forcing the police to dig deeper with their investigation, and him making when he makes a mistake or when something goes wrong for them, it doesn't have a major impact on what they do as an organization. They kind of, you know, deal with it and then move on.
Yep.
And that to me is a function of leadership and what established leadership in terms of how long they've been in the game, their understanding of the game, and the way they move. So I went with the Greek as the MVP. Who was
Yep, that's a good one. Good one. I can't complain on that.
I almost had Prop Joe too. I almost had Prop Joe.
Yeah.
It definitely was a big, like, because, you know, Prop Joe is basically saying, you know, y'all, you listen, my product, Prop Joe gaining 3 towers in the West Side is a major deal. Was a major win for him.
Yeah.
You get that territory. Yeah.
Yep.
Overall, I go with the Greek. Who's your Charding Award for performance?
What's my man's name in the FBI? Gleekus?
Fits you. You talking about the Kutras? You talking about Kutras?
Yeah, Kutras. That's my. He had to play a double agent, right? Like, and in a lot of different ways in which a double agent is played. It's either like really sinister or really stupid. And he didn't do either. So I really appreciated the choice that he made, and he won. I mean, he won big. He's the one who came off with the career day haul off of that. But the way in which he played that entire, like just the chill, like again, like if there's a pattern of me and the things that I like is I love the scenes with very little dialogue are happening. So I didn't talk about it a lot because I wanted to get here. I thoroughly enjoyed the scene with him and the Greek just sitting chilling out. There's nothing being said, but everything's being said in those moments. So I love that. And then I have a very vivid memory of like when he discovers the chips are the drugs by scratching over it. The look of just
Joy.
just unadulterated glee on his face. And that's very hard to pull off just in terms of this is a grown ass man in a very buttoned up and significant role in front of a lot of other grown men. That's not usually a spot where you're like, ooh, let me show unadulterated joy right now. I love that choice. I love that choice.
That's a good one. That's a real
that choice they made. So, anyways, for those reasons, that's he gets my Chardine this week.
I got Stringer. I thought
Nice.
Stringer had to navigate a lot of choppy waters, like to your point. So, he manipulates Bodhi, with this whole mentor / fatherly figure type ordeal.
He got Bodhi completely.
He has Bodhi around his finger. We know that.
Yep.
But then he has to navigate two characters differently in regards to Brianna and Prop Joe. Both who are seasoned as far as knowing the drug game, and he can't give them. He has to give them bits and pieces from an emotional standpoint. I thought Idris Elba was tremendous at that. With, to your point, not saying anything. Some of his best acting also is when he doesn't talk. It's through the eyes, through his facial expressions, his body language. So in those three scenes, he had three. Well, I want to say he had four. I think it was two. I think he was two with Brianna and two with Prop Joe. I think he had four total scenes with that. Through those four scenes, I thought he was tremendous in those scenes. In regards to he can't give away, he can't show his true emotion, what he's really thinking or feeling. And to me, that is brilliant acting, not to even subtly give away what he got kind of like. It has to be like I'm sure he could be. I don't know Idris Elba's poker game, but I'm sure Stringer Bell would be a great poker player because he does not give away a lot in terms of what the emotion that's on his face and with his body language. Now there will come a time where he does, and we'll see that moving forward. But as of right now, in particular this episode, he's not giving away a lot. Does not give away a lot with those two characters, which are very savvy. You're talking about the sister of Kingpin. Brianna's no fool, and we're talking about a Kingpin in Prop Joe. So he had to be on his game in those scenes in order to not give away anything to those two characters. So I had him as my the Chardine award. But yeah, I liked your one about Kutris because he had like that. And even in that scene, which you mentioned at the end, where he goes, gets excited and happy, I didn't see that coming from his character. Based on what we had saw previously in this episode, it seemed like he was kind of like a deadpan, serious. So that's great acting to me to see that type of that type of range. And when he gets all happy and excited, I did not see that coming. in terms of that type of emotion, showing that type of emotion from that particular character. So that was a great piece of acting from this stand. Fascinating episode. Fascinating, there are a lot of minutia in this episode, a lot of, like I said, a lot of moving pieces in this episode. Again, I completely rebut Vulture's 47 in terms of 47 ranking on this episode. I like, this is a top 30 episode easily, in my opinion. And I told you before the broadcast, before you even came on the air, that I love this episode. But there's certainly more to come, and that these next 3 episodes are going to be explosive, to say the least. Especially this next episode in terms of what's going to happen. So it's all downhill from here in regards to season 2 as we head towards a up and coming, not up and coming, but as we head towards an anticipated season 3 of this show. Any closing thoughts?
This show's brilliant. That's all I can say. This show's brilliant. This show's brilliant. I wish we could parallel the rest of the season and season 3 immediately, like right now. Like,
yeah,
that's the game that they're playing right now, or that's the, you know, like, that's the fun that we can have with it now that we couldn't have with it then because we didn't know the depth of what they were doing. So it's just like, I love season 2. I do.
Yeah. No.
But just how they're putting things in place, I'm just like, oh, this would be a really good time to start season 3 simultaneously as well. Because this episode definitely made me want to watch season 3 immediately. Like, immediately. Yeah. Why is good. The why is good.
Nothing to add to that. That is going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast, The Wire Remixed. As always, thanks to one Robert Stapp for joining us. We will see you
Have a good
next
one.
time.
Everybody be healthy, be safe out there.
No question about it. Later. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I will be with you tomorrow with the podcast, not on the wire, but on the world of sports and pop culture. Busy weekends, particularly NBA and pop culture as well. I'm out.